Flight 237 to Chicago sits motionless on the tarmac as armed air marshals storm down the aisle. Jasmine Carter, still in handcuffs, catches sight of the man who stole her first-class seat smirking before his expression transforms to horror when FBI agents approach him instead. The flight attendant who called security on Jasmine now stammers apologies. "Where are you watching from today?" Before we dive deeper into this shocking story of injustice and vindication, take a second to hit that like button and subscribe to see more incredible true stories of people standing up against discrimination. Now, let me take you back to how this explosive situation began. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Vivian Powell's luxury Atlanta penthouse as her alarm chimed at precisely 5 a.m. As CEO of NextGen Technologies, she never allowed herself the luxury of sleeping in, even on days with flights. Today wasn't just any day, it was potentially the most important of her career. A $500 million contract awaited in Chicago, one that would cement NextGen's position as a leading technology innovator and silence those who still questioned whether a black woman could truly lead in Silicon Valley. Vivian moved through her morning routine with practiced precision. 30 minutes on the treadmill, a quick shower, and a protein-rich breakfast while reviewing the final presentation points on her tablet. Her closet, organized by color and occasion, made selecting her power outfit effortless, a tailored navy suit with subtle gold accents that projected authority without intimidation. As she applied her makeup, Vivian's mind drifted to her journey. 20 years ago, she'd been a scholarship student sharing a cramped dorm room, determined to prove her high school counselor wrong for suggesting she aimed for something more realistic than engineering. Now she commanded a Fortune 500 company with over 5,000 employees. The journey hadn't been easy. She remembered the venture capital meeting where investors directed all questions to her male subordinate despite her being the founder. The countless times she'd been mistaken for an assistant rather than the boss. The board member who'd suggested her promotion was just good optics for the company. Each incident had strengthened her resolve, taught her to navigate spaces not designed for her. Her phone rang, Calvin Pierce, her executive assistant for the past 5 years. "Morning, Vivian. Just confirming the car will be at your building in 30 minutes. Also, the technical team made some last-minute adjustments to the presentation, nothing major, but I've sent the updated slides to your secure email. Thanks, Calvin. Any word from Darius Williams' team?" Darius was the CEO of Global Innovations, the company whose contract they were pursuing. His assistant confirmed he'll be present with their full executive board. "Oh, and I should mention, Rich Tech submitted a competing bid last night." Vivian paused mid-motion while putting in her earrings. Rich Tech was their largest competitor, known for aggressive tactics and led by Gregory Whitfield, a man who'd made his disdain for Vivian clear at multiple industry events. "That's unexpected. Their proposal window closed last week. Apparently, they received a special extension. I don't have details." "Interesting timing," Vivian murmured. "We'll proceed as planned. Our proposal is superior, and Darius knows quality." Despite her confident words, an uneasy feeling settled in her stomach as she gathered her things. She'd learned to trust her intuition over the years, it had saved her from bad deals and worse partnerships. Downstairs, her driver waited with her preferred morning tea. The drive to Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport provided time to center herself, gazing at the Atlanta skyline she'd come to love since moving here 8 years ago to establish NextGen's headquarters. The special treatment Vivian typically received as a frequent first-class traveler dissolved the moment she entered the airport. The security agent scrutinized her ID longer than necessary, comparing her face to the photo multiple times. "Is there a problem?" Vivian asked calmly. "Just being thorough, ma'am," the agent replied, emphasizing "ma'am" in a way that made it sound less than respectful. At the premium check-in counter, the attendant looked past her to the white businessman behind her. "I can help you, sir." "I believe I was next," Vivian stated firmly. The attendant's smile tightened. "Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you might be in the wrong line." This is for first class and elite status members. Vivian silently handed over her platinum frequent flyer card and first class ticket. The attendant's expression shifted, but no apology came. These subtle interactions continued through security, where her bag was randomly selected for additional screening. Vivian maintained her composure, having long ago learned that displaying anger would only reinforce stereotypes. In the first-class lounge, she found a quiet corner to review her presentation. She was adding notes when she felt someone's presence. Looking up, she saw a tall white man with silver hair in an expensive but conservatively cut suit. He was staring directly at her. "Excuse me, is there something I can help you with?" Vivian asked. The man, who she would later learn was Bradley Reynolds, senior executive at Rich Tech, gave her a dismissive glance before turning away without responding, as if she weren't worth the effort of acknowledgement. Vivian returned to her work, pushing down the familiar burn of indignation. Today was too important to let casual racism distract her. Little did she know that this brief encounter was just the precursor to what awaited on Flight 237. Now boarding Flight 237 to Chicago O'Hare, we invite our first-class passengers and Diamond Elite members to board at this time. Vivian collected her designer carry-on and laptop bag, moving toward the jetway with the confident stride that had become her trademark in boardrooms across America. Her boarding pass indicated Seat 2A. Window seat, first row behind the exclusive first-class divider, her preferred spot for short domestic flights. She'd selected it specifically to allow quick deplaning in Chicago, where her driver would be waiting to whisk her directly to the Global Innovations headquarters. The flight attendant at the door, whose name tag read Melissa Wilson, offered a professional smile as she scanned Vivian's boarding pass. "Welcome aboard, Ms. Powell." Vivian navigated the narrow aisle to her seat, efficiently stowed her carry-on in the overhead compartment, and placed her laptop bag under the seat in front of her. The pre-flight routine was second nature after hundreds of business trips. She arranged her belongings in Seat 2A, phone in the side pocket, tablet accessible for in-flight work, noise-canceling headphones ready. "Excuse me," she said to the flight attendant passing by. "Could I use the restroom quickly before we finish boarding?" "Of course," Melissa replied. "We have about 15 minutes before we close the doors." Vivian made her way to the front lavatory, taking only about 3 minutes before returning to her seat, only to find it occupied. Bradley Reynolds, the same silver-haired executive who had dismissed her in the lounge, was now comfortably settled in her assigned seat, his jacket hanging in the first-class closet, his items arranged in her space. Her belongings had been moved to the aisle seat. For a moment, Vivian stood in disbelief. She checked her boarding pass again, definitely Seat 2A. "Excuse me, sir. I believe you're in my seat," she said politely but firmly. Bradley barely glanced up from his phone. "I don't think so. My boarding pass says 2A. Window seat." Vivian maintained her professional tone, aware that other first-class passengers were watching the interaction. Now Bradley looked up, his eyes moving over her in an evaluative way that made her skin crawl. "Are you sure you're in the right section? First class is quite expensive." The implication hung in the air, crystal clear to everyone within earshot. A middle-aged white woman across the aisle pursed her lips disapprovingly, though whether at Bradley's comment or at Vivian's presence wasn't immediately clear. "I'm exactly where I belong," Vivian replied, her voice cooler now. "And you're in my assigned seat. I'd appreciate it if you'd move to your actual seat." Bradley's expression hardened. "Listen, I'm not moving. I always sit by the window. Perhaps you misread your boarding pass." Melissa, the flight attendant who had greeted Vivian earlier, approached. "Is there a problem here?" Before Vivian could respond, Bradley interjected. "This woman is harassing me, claiming I'm in her seat. I've been sitting here since boarding began." Vivian felt her pulse quicken but kept her voice steady. "That's simply untrue. I was in this seat, left briefly to use the restroom with my belongings here, and returned to find this gentleman had moved them and taken my seat. She extended her boarding pass to Melissa. As you can see, I'm assigned to 2A. Melissa glanced at the boarding pass but made no move to verify Bradley's ticket. Instead, her demeanor shifted, becoming noticeably cooler toward Vivian. "Sir, may I see your boarding pass, please?" she asked Bradley in a much more deferential tone. Bradley made a show of searching his pockets before producing his boarding pass, which he handed to Melissa. Vivian caught a glimpse. It clearly showed 4C, not 2A. "Well," Melissa said, returning both boarding passes, "there seems to be some confusion. Ms. Powell, perhaps you'd be comfortable taking another first-class seat? We have 4C available." Vivian felt heat rising in her cheeks. "There's no confusion. My assigned seat is 2A. His is 4C. I don't understand why I should move when I'm in the correct seat." By now, several passengers had their phones out, recording the interaction. Bradley noticed and seemed to become more performative. "This is ridiculous," he announced loudly. "Some people just don't know their place. Probably got upgraded through some affirmative action program the airline is running." The naked racism of the comment caused several gasps. A young black man in the third row looked up sharply, while an elderly white couple exchanged uncomfortable glances. "That's completely inappropriate," Vivian stated firmly. "I paid for this seat, I was assigned this seat, and I have every right to sit in this seat. The fact that you're making this a racial issue speaks volumes about your character, not mine." Melissa positioned herself slightly closer to Bradley, as if unconsciously choosing sides. "Please lower your voice, Ms. Powell. We don't want to disturb other passengers." "I'm not the one making racist comments," Vivian pointed out, maintaining her composure despite the rising tension. "Look," Bradley said with exaggerated patience, "I'm an executive with important work to complete during this flight. I need the window seat." "I'm the CEO of Next Gen Technologies," Vivian countered. "I also have important work, which is why I specifically selected this seat when booking my flight." Something flickered in Bradley's eyes at the mention of her company, recognition, and something else. Calculation. The standoff continued as more economy passengers filed past, some slowing to observe the drama unfolding in first class. Melissa disappeared briefly, returning with the flight captain, a tall man with graying temples and an authoritative presence. "What seems to be the issue here?" he asked, directing his question primarily to Melissa rather than assessing both passengers involved. "This passenger insists on having the window seat," Melissa explained, gesturing toward Vivian, "but refuses to accept an alternative accommodation." "Because it's my assigned seat," Vivian interjected, frustration finally bleeding into her voice. "Why is this even a discussion? In what world does someone get to take another passenger's assigned seat and then have the airline accommodate their theft?" The captain frowned slightly. "Ma'am, I understand you're upset, but we need to resolve this quickly to maintain our departure schedule. If another first-class seat is available, would you ask a white male passenger to give up his assigned seat because someone decided they wanted it?" Vivian challenged, looking the captain directly in the eyes. His slight hesitation told her everything. "I'm not moving on principle," Vivian declared. "This isn't about a window versus an aisle seat. This is about right and wrong. I was assigned 2A, I was seated in 2A, and this gentleman took my seat while I used the restroom. Those are the facts." Bradley's face had reddened slightly. "Captain, this woman is becoming hysterical and making baseless accusations. I cannot be expected to fly seated next to someone this unstable." "Hysterical?" Vivian repeated incredulously. "Is that the word we use now for a black woman who stands up for herself?" The captain shifted uncomfortably. "Ms. Powell, if you can't lower your voice and accept the alternative arrangements, I'll have to ask you to deplane for the comfort and safety of our other passengers." Comfort and safety? Vivian couldn't believe what she was hearing. His comfort over my rights? His safety from what, having to sit in his assigned seat? Melissa was already on the cabin phone. "We need assistance in first class, please." As the confrontation escalated, no one noticed the young flight attendant at the back of first class, quietly recording the entire incident on her phone, her face a mask of professional neutrality hiding her growing alarm at what she was witnessing. 2 air marshals boarded the aircraft within minutes, their purposeful strides and stern expressions silencing the murmurs that had spread throughout the cabin. They moved directly to Vivian's position, where she still stood her ground beside seat 2A. "Ma'am, we need you to come with us," the taller marshal stated, his hand resting casually near his holstered weapon. "On what grounds?" Vivian asked, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her system. "The flight crew has identified you as a disruptive passenger refusing to comply with their instructions," the second marshal replied mechanically. Vivian maintained her composure. "I'm simply trying to sit in my assigned seat, which this man took while I was in the restroom. I've shown my boarding pass. I've been calm and reasonable. How exactly am I being disruptive?" The marshals exchanged glances, clearly unprepared for articulate resistance rather than emotional outbursts. Melissa stepped forward. "She's been argumentative and causing a scene since boarding. Several passengers have complained about feeling uncomfortable." Bradley nodded in confirmation. "She's been quite aggressive. I'm concerned for my safety." "That's absolutely false," Vivian countered, looking around at the other passengers. "Will anyone here speak the truth about what they've witnessed?" Most averted their eyes, the universal response of bystanders unwilling to become involved. However, a young white woman in row 3 spoke up. "She's telling the truth. The man took her seat. I saw it happen." A middle-aged black businessman added, "I've been recording this." She hasn't raised her voice once until challenged about being hysterical, which she clearly isn't. Their interventions came too late. The lead marshal had already received his instructions through his earpiece. "Ma'am, you need to gather your belongings and come with us now, or we'll have to use restraints." The threat hung in the air for a moment before Vivian realized they were serious. "You're going to handcuff me? For what crime exactly?" When no specific answer came, just a repeated command to deplane, Vivian felt a surge of memories from her childhood in Birmingham, Alabama. Her mother, a civil rights attorney, had once told her, when facing injustice, sometimes standing your ground is the only option, even when it costs you. "I will not voluntarily leave this plane when I've done nothing wrong," Vivian stated firmly. "You'll have to physically remove me, and I want everyone here to witness it." The marshals moved forward simultaneously. One took her arm while the other produced handcuffs. The cold metal closed around her wrists with a definitive click that seemed to echo through the suddenly silent cabin. "This is what happens when you don't know your place," Bradley muttered, just loud enough for Vivian to hear as the marshals began escorting her down the aisle. The walk of shame through the aircraft was excruciating. Economy passengers craned their necks to see the handcuffed black woman being led away. Vivian held her head high, but each step felt heavier than the last. Another angry black woman causing trouble, one older white passenger commented to his seatmate, not bothering to lower his voice. "What did she do?" a child asked innocently. "Probably threatened someone," the mother replied, pulling her child closer as Vivian passed. These casual assumptions of guilt based solely on her race cut deeper than the physical discomfort of the handcuffs. Vivian thought of all the times she'd worked twice as hard to be considered half as good, all the rooms where she'd been the only black face, all the assumptions she'd had to overcome. For a moment, as they reached the jet bridge, Vivian felt her carefully constructed professional facade begin to crack. Tears threatened at the corners of her eyes, not from fear or sadness, but from pure frustration at the injustice. The knowledge that no matter her achievements, her education, or her position, she could still be reduced to a stereotype in seconds. Then she remembered her mother's words from long ago, "They expect you to break. Don't give them that satisfaction." Vivian straightened her spine, blinked away the moisture in her eyes, and walked with dignity despite the handcuffs binding her wrists. She would not break. Not here. Not today. The marshals led her through service corridors, avoiding the main terminal where passengers might witness the spectacle. Eventually, they deposited her in a small, windowless room with nothing but a metal table, 2 chairs, and a conspicuous camera in the corner. "Someone will be with you shortly," one marshal said before they both exited, leaving Vivian alone with her thoughts. They had taken her phone, her laptop, even her watch, all her connections to the outside world. Without these tools, she couldn't contact Calvin, couldn't alert her team in Chicago, couldn't begin damage control. The critical meeting with Global Innovations was scheduled for 2 p.m. Given the current situation, she would almost certainly miss it. Hours of preparation, months of strategizing, the potential $500 million contract that would secure NextGen's future. All potentially lost because a privileged white man decided her assigned seat should be his, and an entire system backed his entitlement over her rights. As the minutes ticked by, Vivian's thoughts turned increasingly grim. How would this affect NextGen's reputation? Would the board stand behind her, or would they see this as an embarrassment requiring distance? Would the video already circulating online help or hurt her case? Most immediately, what would happen to the Chicago deal? Have you ever been in a situation where you were clearly in the right but the system worked against you anyway? Comment number 1 if you've experienced discrimination firsthand like Vivian. Or comment number 2 if you've witnessed someone else being treated unfairly and wished you'd spoken up sooner. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to hear what happens next in this incredible true story. Now, let's continue to see how Vivian's situation takes an unexpected turn. Airport Security Officer Thomas Bailey rubbed his tired eyes as he reviewed the incident report filed by the air marshals. 20 years on the job had taught him to look beyond the official narrative, especially when the charges seemed vague. Disruptive behavior, and failure to comply with crew instructions, could mean anything from actual threats to simply questioning authority. "Officer Bailey." A young voice interrupted his reading. Zoe Martinez, a security intern in her final semester at Georgia State, stood in his doorway, her expression troubled. "Can I show you something?" Thomas waved her in. "What's on your mind, Martinez?" Zoe placed her phone on his desk, the screen displaying a social media feed. "That passenger they brought in from Flight 237? The videos are everywhere." Thomas scrolled through the feed, his frown deepening as he watched multiple angles of the same incident. The footage clearly showed a professional black woman calmly presenting her boarding pass, being dismissed, and ultimately removed in handcuffs while maintaining her composure. There was nothing resembling the aggressive behavior described in the report. "This doesn't match what I'm reading," Thomas said, reaching for his desk phone. "Who authorized the removal?" "Flight captain requested it. Melissa Wilson was the lead flight attendant who called it in," Zoe supplied, having already investigated. "Sir, there's more. The passenger is Vivian Powell, CEO of NextGen Technologies. She's one of the most successful black women executives in the country." Thomas's head snapped up. "The tech company? They're huge. $1 billion valuation," Zoe confirmed. And according to her assistant, who's been calling non-stop, she was headed to Chicago for a major contract meeting. Thomas was already on his feet. "Find out where they're holding her. And get me everything we have on the male passenger involved, Bradley Reynolds, seated in 2A. While Zoe hurried to comply, Thomas's phone rang. The caller ID displayed FBI Field Office, Atlanta. "Bailey," he answered. "Officer Bailey, this is Special Agent Diana Chen with the FBI. We understand you have a situation with a passenger removed from Flight 237 to Chicago." Thomas straightened. "Yes, ma'am. We're actually reviewing that case now. We're sending agents to the airport immediately. We need you to ensure Bradley Reynolds remains on that aircraft. Do not allow the plane to depart." "Reynolds? He's not the one we detained." "He's still on the plane," Thomas replied, confused. We removed a woman named Vivian Powell. A pause. Powell is the CEO of NextGen Technologies. Yes, ma'am. This is a serious situation, Officer Bailey. Reynolds is a person of interest in an ongoing corporate espionage investigation. Ground that plane immediately and have your team locate Powell. She may have been specifically targeted. Thomas's mind raced as he connected the dots. I'll handle it personally. How soon can your people be here? 10 minutes out. Thomas hung up and rushed toward the detention area, calling the tower on his radio to ground flight 237. The pieces were starting to fit together, forming a picture far more complex than a simple seating dispute. Meanwhile, across town, Calvin Pierce paced his office, phone pressed to his ear as he coordinated NextGen's response to the crisis. Social media notifications had begun flooding in 30 minutes ago, first a trickle, then a deluge. Videos of Vivian being handcuffed and removed from the plane were spreading like wildfire. I need our legal team at the airport now, he instructed NextGen's chief counsel. And get our PR department to craft a statement. This is already trending. Indeed, hashtag Justice for Vivian and hashtag Flying While Black were rocketing up Twitter's trending topics. Public reaction was split but increasingly supportive of Vivian as more complete videos emerged showing the full context of the incident. Calvin's assistant rushed in. The FBI just called. They're asking about any sensitive information Ms. Powell might have been carrying regarding the Chicago presentation. Calvin froze. What exactly did they want to know? Whether she had proprietary technology information, contract details, anything a competitor might want. Rich tech, Calvin whispered, the pieces suddenly clicking into place. He grabbed his keys. I'm going to the airport. Keep trying to reach Vivian. Back at the airport, Thomas arrived at the detention room just as a junior officer was unlocking Vivian's handcuffs. Ms. Powell, I'm Thomas Bailey, head of airport security. I want to personally apologize for this situation. Vivian massaged her wrists, her expression guarded. I appreciate that, Officer Bailey, but an apology doesn't undo the humiliation I've experienced or recover the critical business meeting I'm now missing. I understand, and we're working to rectify this immediately. But there's something you need to know. Thomas lowered his voice. The FBI is on their way. They believe you may have been deliberately targeted by Bradley Reynolds. Vivian's eyes widened slightly, the first crack in her professional demeanor. What do you mean, targeted? Reynolds is under investigation for corporate espionage. They've grounded the flight and are moving to detain him now. For a moment, Vivian was speechless. Then understanding dawned. The Chicago contract. NextGen and Rich Tech are the final bidders. He wasn't just being racist and entitled, he was trying to prevent me from making that meeting. Thomas nodded grimly. And there might be more. Did you leave any devices unattended when you visited the restroom? Vivian's hand flew to her mouth. My laptop was in my seat. I didn't lock it because I was only gone for a moment. We need to have that examined immediately. If you'll come with me, the FBI agents are arriving now, and I believe they'll want to speak with you. As they exited the detention area, Vivian spotted Calvin rushing toward her, relief evident on his face. Vivian. Thank God. Are you all right? I'm fine, Calvin. But we have a situation that goes beyond racial discrimination. Bradley Reynolds may have compromised our presentation. Calvin's expression hardened. I brought our security team. They can examine your devices right away. As FBI agents streamed past them toward the gates, Thomas guided Vivian and Calvin to a private conference room where they could speak with investigators. The atmosphere had shifted dramatically. Vivian was no longer a troublemaker to be contained but a potential victim whose cooperation was crucial. Special Agent Diana Chin entered the room, her crisp suit and direct manner conveying immediate authority. Ms. Powell, I'm sorry for what you've experienced today. We have reason to believe it was not a random incident. Officer Bailey mentioned corporate espionage, Vivian said. Is Bradley Reynolds connected to Rich Tech? Agent Chen nodded. He's their head of competitive intelligence, though that's not in his official title. We've been building a case against Rich Tech for months: unauthorized access to competitors' systems, insider trading, industrial sabotage. Your encounter today fits their pattern of operation. He took my seat deliberately, Vivian realized. To delay me, to access my devices, or both. Exactly. And now we need to move quickly. With your permission, we'd like our cybersecurity team to examine your laptop and phone to determine if any spyware was installed. As Vivian nodded her agreement, another agent entered with news: we've detained Reynolds. The plane is secure. He had this in his possession. The agent held up a small USB device in an evidence bag. Agent Chen's expression tightened. A data skimmer. Ms. Powell, it appears you interrupted him before he could complete whatever he was attempting. For the first time since the ordeal began, Vivian felt a sense of relief washing over her. What had seemed like yet another instance of racial discrimination had unexpectedly transformed into something entirely different: a criminal conspiracy that she had inadvertently disrupted. What happens now? She asked. We return to the aircraft and collect your belongings. Our team will secure your devices and examine them. And, Agent Chen added with a slight smile, we arrange for you to reach Chicago in time for your meeting. The Bureau has resources. As they prepared to return to the gate, Thomas received a radio call. Sir, the passengers are demanding answers. The videos have gone viral, and media vans are arriving at the terminal. Vivian and Agent Chen exchanged looks. The story was exploding beyond their control, shaping itself in real time through the lens of social media and public perception. Whatever happened next would unfold not just in the private rooms of law enforcement but in the court of public opinion. The tide had turned, but the full implications were only beginning to emerge. As Vivian approached Gate B-23, flanked by Agent Chen, Officer Bailey, and Calvin, she was struck by the transformation of her circumstance. Just 30 minutes ago, she had been led away in handcuffs, humiliated and powerless. Now she returned with an FBI escort, her dignity restored and the truth emerging. Media representatives had already gathered near the gate, alerted by the viral videos and social media storm. Camera flashes punctuated the terminal as reporters shouted questions. Agent Chen deftly guided their group through a service door to avoid the press gauntlet. We'll make a statement after we've secured the scene, she assured Vivian. Right now, our priority is retrieving your belongings and addressing the passengers. The jetway felt longer this time, each step carrying Vivian closer to a confrontation she hadn't expected to face again. What would the other passengers think? How would the flight crew react? And most pressingly, how would Bradley Reynolds respond when he realized his plan had catastrophically backfired? Agent Chen paused before they reached the aircraft door. Ms. Powell, I should prepare you. We've detained Reynolds but haven't removed him yet. We wanted to coordinate with you first and ensure the other passengers understand exactly what happened. Vivian nodded, straightening her jacket and squaring her shoulders. I'm ready. They entered the aircraft to a cabin frozen in tense silence. All eyes turned to Vivian, then to the FBI agents following behind her. Melissa Wilson, the flight attendant who had sided with Bradley, stood near the galley, her face drained of color. The captain emerged from the cockpit, his expression unreadable. Bradley Reynolds sat in seat 2A, Vivian's seat, with two air marshals standing beside him. His smug confidence had evaporated, replaced by tightly controlled panic as he recognized the FBI agents boarding the plane. Agent Chen addressed the cabin. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Special Agent Diana Chen with the Federal Bureau of Investigation. I apologize for the delay in your flight. We're addressing a serious security matter that requires our immediate attention. A murmur rippled through the passengers. Agent Chen continued, Ms. Vivian Powell was wrongfully removed from this flight earlier. She will be returning to her assigned seat, 2A, which was illegally occupied by another passenger as part of an attempted criminal act. All eyes shifted between Vivian and Bradley. Melissa stepped forward, her voice shaking. I don't understand. We were told she was being disruptive. What you witnessed, Agent Chen explained, was a deliberate attempt at corporate espionage. Mr. Reynolds here is currently under investigation for multiple counts of industrial sabotage, wire fraud, and conspiracy. The revelation sent shockwaves through the cabin. Passengers who had been recording earlier now held their phones higher, capturing the dramatic reversal unfolding before them. Agent Chen turned to Bradley. Mr. Reynolds, please stand and place your hands behind your back. Bradley's facade finally cracked. This is ridiculous. I just wanted a window seat. Is that why you had a data skimmer in your possession? Agent Chen countered. Is that why you specifically targeted the CEO of a company competing with your employer for a $500 million contract? Several passengers gasped at this disclosure. The pieces were falling into place publicly now, the narrative shifting from racial discrimination, though that had certainly been a factor, to corporate criminality. You deliberately selected Ms. Powell's flight, Agent Chen continued as her partner handcuffed Bradley. You took her assigned seat while she was in the restroom. You attempted to access her devices. And you leveraged racial bias among the crew and passengers to have her removed when she rightfully challenged you. Bradley's face contorted with anger. You can't prove any of that. It's her word against mine. Actually, Agent Chen replied, we have substantial evidence, including communications between you and rich tech executives discussing plans to prevent NextGen from securing the Chicago contract by any means necessary. As Bradley was escorted from the plane, experiencing the same walk of shame he had orchestrated for Vivian, the mood in the cabin transformed. Passengers who had silently witnessed Vivian's removal now averted their eyes in shame or offered apologetic glances. Melissa approached Vivian, visibly struggling to maintain her composure. Ms. Powell, I cannot begin to express how sorry I am for my role in this situation. I should have verified both boarding passes immediately. I should have listened to you. Vivian measured her response carefully. What happened today wasn't just about a seating assignment, Ms. Wilson. It was about assumptions and biases that allowed a criminal to weaponize racism for his benefit. I hope this becomes a learning opportunity for everyone involved. The captain stepped forward next, his authority diminished by his poor judgment. Ms. Powell, on behalf of the airline, I offer my deepest apologies. My handling of the situation was inexcusable. Vivian nodded acknowledgement but didn't offer absolution. Some reckonings would need to happen through proper channels. As she reclaimed her seat in 2A, now being thoroughly examined by FBI cybersecurity specialists, Vivian noticed the young flight attendant who had been in the back of first class earlier. The woman approached cautiously. Ms. Powell? I'm Amanda Torres. I want you to know I recorded everything from the beginning. I sent the videos to my supervisor and posted them online when I saw what was happening. I couldn't stand by and do nothing. Vivian felt a surge of gratitude. Thank you, Amanda. Your actions may have made all the difference today. Agent Chen rejoined them. Our team has confirmed that Reynolds attempted to install spyware on your laptop, but it appears he was interrupted before the installation completed. Your devices are clean, though we'd like to do a more thorough examination later. Calvin, who had remained professionally composed throughout, finally allowed himself a small smile. The FBI has arranged for a private jet to take us to Chicago. We can still make the meeting if we leave within the hour. Vivian checked her watch. Then let's not waste any more time. As they prepared to depart, a distinguished older woman from the first row approached. Ms. Powell? I'm Victoria Hughes. I witnessed everything that happened, and I want you to know that I'll be providing my statement to both the FBI and my considerable network of business associates. What happened to you today was unconscionable. Vivian recognized the name immediately, Victoria Hughes was a legendary venture capitalist whose endorsement could open doors throughout the business world. "I appreciate that, Ms. Hughes," Vivian replied. Victoria handed Vivian her business card. "Call me when you return from Chicago. I think we have much to discuss about the future of technology investment and who deserves to lead it." As they finally exited the aircraft, the remaining passengers applauded spontaneously. A gesture of respect and perhaps atonement for their earlier silence. Vivian acknowledged them with dignified grace, neither gloating nor diminishing the significance of what had transpired. In the terminal, the media awaited, hungry for the dramatic story that had captivated social media. Agent Chen skillfully managed the situation, providing a brief statement while ensuring Vivian's privacy and prompt departure for Chicago. On the private FBI jet, Vivian finally allowed herself a moment of reflection. The day had been a roller coaster of indignity, injustice, vindication, and unexpected opportunity. What had begun as another instance of the racism she had faced throughout her career had transformed into something that might paradoxically advance her company's position and broader social awareness. As the jet accelerated down the runway, Calvin asked the question that had been hanging between them. "How do you want to handle this with the board and the Chicago team?" Vivian gazed out at the Atlanta skyline receding below them. "With complete transparency and from a position of strength. What happened today wasn't just about me or NextGen. It was about systems that still allow qualified black professionals to be undermined and discriminated against, systems that criminals like Reynolds can exploit for their benefit. The board might worry about negative publicity," Calvin cautioned. "They should be more concerned about being on the wrong side of history," Vivian replied. "Today we don't just present our technological vision to global innovations. We demonstrate that NextGen stands for integrity, resilience, and justice, qualities any serious business partner should value." The jet climbed into the clear blue sky, carrying Vivian toward a confrontation that had transformed from a simple business presentation into something far more significant. A moment where corporate America would be forced to reckon with the persistent realities of racism and the extraordinary resilience of those who faced it daily. As Flight 237 finally departed Atlanta, 3 hours behind schedule and without its original first-class configuration, the digital wildfire sparked by Amanda Torres's videos continued to spread across social media platforms. What had begun as a localized incident was rapidly transforming into a national conversation about race, corporate ethics, and accountability. Vivian's private jet was still cruising at 30,000 feet when Calvin's phone began lighting up with notifications. Seated across from Vivian in the luxurious cabin, he scrolled through the barrage of alerts with widening eyes. The hashtags #JusticeForVivian and #FlyingWhileBlack have over 500,000 mentions in the last hour, he reported. "Your name is trending in all 50 states. Vivian looked up from her laptop where she'd been refining her presentation for global innovations. "What's the overall sentiment?" "Overwhelmingly supportive now that the full story is emerging," Calvin replied. "The initial videos showed your removal but didn't capture Reynolds' behavior clearly. Now that Amanda's complete footage is circulating, public opinion has solidified in your favor." He turned his tablet toward her, displaying a viral tweet from a prominent civil rights attorney. "Vivian Powell's experience isn't isolated. It's what happens when racism becomes so normalized that it can be weaponized by criminals. This is corporate America's mirror moment." #JusticeForVivian attached to the tweet was a split-screen image, on one side, Vivian in handcuffs being escorted from the plane, on the other, Bradley Reynolds in the same position just an hour later. The visual juxtaposition was powerful and unmistakable. "Our PR team wants to know if you'd like to issue a statement," Calvin said. Vivian considered carefully. "Not yet. Let's focus on the Chicago meeting first. I want any statement I make to come from a position of strength after we've secured the contract." Even as she spoke, the airline was scrambling to contain the damage. Their stock had dropped 8% in the first hour after the videos went viral, and their initial statement, a generic reference to investigating the incident, had only fueled public outrage. Social media users were already sharing their own experiences of discrimination on the airline, creating a damning pattern that suggested Vivian's treatment wasn't an isolated incident but part of a systemic problem. "The airline's CEO has requested a personal call with you," Calvin noted, checking another message. "And 3 board members have reached out separately." Vivian's expression remained neutral. "Tell them I'll be available after the Chicago meeting. No earlier." The timing was strategic. By then, she would either have secured the $500 million contract, strengthening her position immeasurably, or she would know exactly where she stood with the board if the deal fell through. Calvin continued monitoring the online reaction. Rich Tech's stock is taking a hit too. Down 12% and falling. Investors are nervous about the FBI investigation. A notification from NextGen's internal communications director appeared on his screen. The board has called an emergency meeting for 7 p.m. tonight. Several members are expressing concern about the company being drawn into a controversial situation. Vivian's jaw tightened slightly, the only visible sign of her frustration. Controversial situation. "I was the victim of a crime specifically because I'm the CEO of NextGen. The company was already involved the moment Reynolds targeted me." Richard Blackwell seems particularly concerned about public perception, Calvin added, referring to the most conservative board member. "Richard has always been more concerned with appearance than substance," Vivian replied. "Forward me the meeting details. I'll join remotely after the Global Innovations presentation." As they began their descent into Chicago, Calvin showed Vivian one final post that had gone viral. A statement from Victoria Hughes that was rapidly reshaping the narrative. "Today I witnessed the extraordinary composure of NextGen CEO Vivian Powell as she faced blatant discrimination that was later revealed to be part of a corporate espionage attempt. As someone who has funded over 200 companies in my career, I can state unequivocally that Ms. Powell demonstrated the exact leadership qualities any serious investor or business partner should value. The real question is not whether NextGen deserves your business, but whether your business deserves a leader of Ms. Powell's caliber. #InvestInIntegrity #Justice for Vivian." The post included Victoria's verified status as managing partner of Hughes Venture Capital, one of the most respected investment firms in the technology sector. Her endorsement carried tremendous weight. "Victoria Hughes doesn't make public statements like this lightly," Vivian observed. "This changes the dynamics considerably." As their jet touched down at Chicago O'Hare, Vivian's phone finally reconnected to the network, immediately flooding with messages. Among them was a text from Darius Williams, CEO of Global Innovations. "Just saw what happened in Atlanta. Still expecting you at 2 o'clock. Remarkable resilience, Vivian." The car waiting on the tarmac whisked Vivian and Calvin directly to Global Innovations headquarters in downtown Chicago. During the ride, they reviewed the latest developments. The airline had issued a more substantial apology and announced the suspension of both Melissa Wilson and the flight captain pending investigation. Rich Tech had released a statement claiming Bradley Reynolds acted alone without company authorization, and the FBI had expanded their investigation to include multiple executives at Rich Tech. "The narrative has completely transformed in just 3 hours," Calvin marveled. "From disruptive passenger to corporate espionage victim and symbol of resilience." Vivian gazed out at the Chicago skyline coming into view. That transformation only happened because people like Amanda Torres were willing to document the truth, and because the FBI was already building a case against Rich Tech. How many similar incidents happen daily without such factors aligning? The question hung in the air between them. A reminder that for every viral video capturing injustice, countless others went unrecorded and unaddressed. As they pulled up to Global Innovations' gleaming headquarters, Vivian took a deep breath and centered herself. Despite the extraordinary circumstances of the day, she couldn't allow herself to be defined solely by what had happened on Flight 237. She was here to secure a transformative contract for NextGen. To be evaluated on the merit of her company's technology and vision, not just her personal resilience. Yet as she stepped from the car, straightened her suit jacket, and prepared to enter the building, Vivian knew that the events of the day had irrevocably changed the context of this meeting. She wasn't just presenting a technology solution anymore. She was demonstrating what leadership looked like in the face of adversity. A quality every bit as valuable as the innovative technology NextGen had developed. Calvin handed her the presentation portfolio. "Ready?" Vivian nodded, her expression resolute. "More than ever." "What would you do if you were in Vivian's position right now?" Comment number 1: if you would use this unexpected publicity to highlight the broader issues of discrimination in corporate America. Or comment number 2: if you would focus strictly on business and try to keep the personal incident separate from the contract negotiation. This incredible story continues to unfold in ways you won't believe. Like and subscribe to make sure you don't miss what happens next in the Global Innovations boardroom. The reception area of Global Innovations gleamed with minimalist design, all glass, chrome, and subtle lighting that reflected the company's reputation for cutting-edge technology wrapped in elegant simplicity. Under normal circumstances, Vivian would have appreciated the aesthetics and the statement they made about the company's values. Today, however, her focus remained entirely on the task at hand. The receptionist recognized her immediately. "Ms. Powell, welcome to Global Innovations. Mr. Williams is expecting you in the main boardroom." As Vivian and Calvin were escorted through the building, they noticed employees glancing their way, some openly staring, clear evidence that news of the Atlanta incident had spread throughout the corporate world. Their guide, an executive assistant named Michael, seemed unusually deferential. "Ms. Powell, everyone here has been talking about what happened in Atlanta," he said quietly as they rode the elevator to the executive floor. "It's truly appalling how you were treated." "Thank you, Michael," Vivian replied professionally. "I appreciate the sentiment, but I'm here today to focus on the future partnership between NextGen and Global Innovations." The elevator doors opened to reveal a scene Vivian hadn't anticipated. Instead of being led directly to a private meeting room, they emerged into an open area where at least 20 Global Innovations executives stood waiting. As Vivian stepped forward, they began to applaud. Darius Williams, the imposing CEO of Global Innovations, approached with an extended hand. "Vivian. Extraordinary circumstances today. I'm impressed you made it at all." "It would take more than that to make me miss this meeting, Darius," she replied, matching his firm handshake. Darius gestured toward the waiting executives. "My team insisted on being here to welcome you personally. What happened in Atlanta has resonated with many of us who've faced similar, if less dramatic, situations." Vivian noted the diversity among the gathered executives, significantly more representative than most technology companies. Global Innovations had a reputation for inclusive hiring practices, something that now seemed even more significant. "I appreciate the welcome," Vivian said. "Though I admit, I wasn't expecting quite this reception." Darius smiled slightly. "My 16-year-old daughter showed me the videos this morning. She follows Amanda Torres on several platforms. When I mentioned we had a meeting scheduled with you today, she said, and I quote, 'Dad, if you don't give her company that contract after what she went through to get there, I'm never speaking to you again.'" A ripple of laughter moved through the gathered executives, breaking the tension. Teenage wisdom aside, Darius continued, more seriously, what we witnessed today was a leader demonstrating extraordinary grace under pressure. Exactly the kind of resilience we look for in long-term partners. Now, shall we proceed to the boardroom? I believe you have a presentation that's been through quite a journey to reach us. As they moved toward the boardroom, Calvin leaned close to whisper, "This is unexpected." Vivian nodded slightly. The dynamics had shifted dramatically from what they had anticipated. The challenge now would be leveraging this goodwill without appearing to capitalize on the incident. The boardroom featured a sweeping view of Lake Michigan and downtown Chicago. Global Innovations' executive team took their seats around the massive table, with Darius at the head and Vivian positioned at the focal point for her presentation. As Vivian prepared her materials, she was surprised to see Victoria Hughes enter the room. "Hope you don't mind an additional observer," Victoria said, taking a seat near Darius. I flew commercial. Considerably less dramatic than your journey, I might add. Darius nodded at Victoria. Ms. Hughes's investment firm holds a significant position in global innovations. She requested to join us after witnessing the events in Atlanta firsthand. The presentation itself unfolded with a precision that belied the chaos of the preceding hours. Vivian articulated NextGen's vision for an integrated AI security system that would revolutionize global innovation's product ecosystem. The technology was groundbreaking, a quantum leap beyond competitors' offerings, including those from Rich Tech. Midway through, Darius's assistant entered discreetly and whispered something in his ear. The CEO's expression shifted subtly before he gestured for Vivian to continue. When she concluded the technical portion of the presentation, Darius leaned forward. Before we move to questions, I've just received some information that may be relevant to our discussions. He tapped his tablet, and the room's main screen displayed a breaking news headline: FBI raids RICTech headquarters, multiple executives detained for questioning in corporate espionage investigation. The room fell silent as everyone absorbed the implications. It appears, Darius said carefully, that what happened to you this morning, Vivian, was merely the tip of a very large and ugly iceberg. According to this report, the FBI has evidence that Rich Tech has been systematically targeting competitors, particularly those led by women and minorities, in an attempt to undermine their business opportunities. Vivian maintained her composure, though her mind raced with the implications. I'm disturbed but not entirely surprised. The technology sector has long harbored undercurrents of discrimination that occasionally break the surface in dramatic ways. Victoria Hughes spoke up. What's notable here is not just the criminality, but how easily racial and gender biases were weaponized. Bradley Reynolds counted on those biases to have you removed from that plane. Darius nodded solemnly. Which brings us to an important aspect of this potential partnership. Global Innovations has been working to address systemic biases in technology, both in our workplace and in the products we create. NextGen's AI security system is impressive technically, but I'm equally interested in how you've approached algorithm bias and inclusive design principles. This was an unexpected direction, but one Vivian was well prepared to address. NextGen had been an industry leader in developing bias detection protocols for their AI systems specifically because of Vivian's awareness of how technology could perpetuate existing social inequities. For the next 30 minutes, the discussion evolved beyond the original scope of the presentation into a deeper conversation about corporate responsibility and ethical technology development. Vivian articulated a vision that clearly resonated with the Global Innovations team. As the meeting concluded, Darius stood. I think we've seen enough to make a decision. Global Innovations would be honored to partner with NextGen Technologies on this initiative. Our legal team will prepare the contract documents immediately. The room erupted in applause. Vivian accepted congratulations from around the table, maintaining her professional demeanor despite the extraordinary vindication this represented. As the executives filed out, Darius and Victoria remained behind with Vivian and Calvin. There's something else you should know, Darius said once they were alone. Rich Tech made an aggressive last-minute bid, significantly undercutting your proposal financially. That explains Bradley Reynolds' desperation, Calvin remarked. Indeed, Victoria added. But what's more interesting is how this situation has exposed fault lines within the technology sector. I've received dozens of calls from other investors and executives today, all watching how this plays out. Darius nodded agreement. The contract we're offering isn't just for the security system, Vivian. We want to expand the scope to include a joint initiative addressing diversity and inclusion in technology. The additional funding would be approximately $200 million on top of the original $500 million. Vivian couldn't hide her surprise. That's a substantial expansion of our initial proposal. It's also sound business, Victoria interjected. Studies consistently show that diverse companies outperform their homogeneous counterparts. What happened today highlighted exactly why this matters, not just morally, but financially. As they discussed the expanded partnership, Vivian's phone vibrated with notifications from NextGen's board members. The emergency meeting was still scheduled for 7 p.m., but the tone of the messages had shifted dramatically since news of the FBI raid and the secured contract had broken. Richard Blackwell, who had earlier expressed concerns about controversy, now wrote, "Extraordinary work today, Vivian. Looking forward to discussing the expanded partnership opportunities this evening." The transformation was so transparent it was almost comical. The same board members who had been nervous about association with controversy were now eager to align themselves with success. As the meeting concluded and they prepared to leave, Darius offered a parting thought. "What happened today will be studied in business schools for years to come. Not just as an example of racism and corporate espionage, but as a case study in leadership under pressure. You've changed the conversation, Vivian." Outside Global Innovation's headquarters, reporters had gathered, alerted to the connection between the viral incident in Atlanta and the major contract announcement. Calvin moved to shield Vivian, but she stepped forward deliberately. "I'll make a brief statement," she told him. "It's important to control this narrative." Facing the cameras, Vivian spoke with measured confidence. "Today demonstrates that integrity and innovation remain the true currencies of business success. NextGen Technologies is proud to announce a $700 million partnership with Global Innovations that will not only advance security technology but also address critical issues of diversity and inclusion in the tech sector. What began as an unfortunate incident has culminated in a transformative opportunity. Proof that standing firm for what's right can lead to unexpected positive outcomes." As they drove to their hotel, Calvin reviewed the latest social media metrics. "Your statement is already going viral. The hashtag has evolved to hashtag Vivian Powell effect. People are sharing stories of standing up against discrimination and finding unexpected allies." Vivian gazed out at the Chicago skyline, her mind already turning to the board meeting ahead. The day's events had transformed not just her immediate circumstances but potentially the trajectory of her entire company. The question now was how to harness this momentum for lasting change rather than a momentary media sensation. Back at the hotel, messages awaited from unexpected sources. Melissa Wilson, the flight attendant, had sent a remorseful email through NextGen's public relations channel. The airline's CEO had called 3 more times. Even Bradley Reynolds' wife had reached out, distancing herself from her husband's actions and expressing shame over what had transpired. The world was watching, responding, and recalibrating, all because one woman had refused to give up her rightful seat. After a brief rest at her hotel, Vivian faced her next challenge, the emergency board meeting scheduled for 7 p.m. Originally called out of concern over controversy, the meeting's context had shifted dramatically with the successful contract negotiation and the expanding FBI investigation into rich tech. Calvin had arranged for a secure conference room at their Chicago hotel. Vivian would connect with NextGen's board members, most of whom would be joining virtually from various locations. Only Harrison Montgomery, the board chair, happened to be in Chicago for unrelated business and would attend in person. "The media presence downstairs has doubled in the last hour," Calvin reported as he set up the video conference equipment. "Security is keeping them in the lobby." Vivian nodded, reviewing her notes one final time. This meeting would require delicate handling. Acknowledging the board's earlier concerns while firmly establishing that her actions had ultimately benefited the company immeasurably. Harrison Montgomery arrived precisely at 6:55 p.m., his typically serious demeanor softened by what appeared to be genuine concern. "Vivian. What an extraordinary day you've had. How are you holding up?" "I'm well, Harrison, thank you," Vivian replied, accepting his handshake. "It's been eventful, to say the least." "That's an understatement," Harrison said, taking his seat. "I've been fielding calls from other board members all afternoon. The situation has evolved so rapidly it's been difficult to keep everyone updated." At exactly 7 p.m., the video conference connected, revealing the faces of NextGen's 9 other board members arranged in a grid on the large screen. The expressions ranged from Richard Blackwell's newfound supportiveness to Elizabeth Chen's unwavering encouragement and James Wilson's carefully neutral observation. "Good evening, everyone," Harrison began formally. "This emergency session of NextGen Technologies Board of Directors is now in session. Given the extraordinary circumstances of today, we've adjusted our agenda to address immediate concerns and opportunities." He turned to Vivian. "I believe our CEO has some significant developments to report." Vivian took control of the meeting with calm authority, first summarizing the events in Atlanta with clinical precision, then transitioning to the outcomes: the $700 million contract with Global Innovations, the expanded scope to include diversity initiatives, and the potential for additional partnerships stemming from the heightened visibility. In financial terms, she concluded, today's developments represent a potential 22% increase in projected annual revenue and a significant enhancement of NextGen's market position. The board members absorbed this information with varying reactions. Richard Blackwell was the first to speak. "While the results are certainly impressive, Vivian, I remain concerned about how this all unfolded. Some might suggest you provoked the situation by refusing to accept an alternative seat." Several board members shifted uncomfortably at this suggestion. Vivian had anticipated this line of questioning and was prepared. "Richard, let me be absolutely clear," she replied, her voice steady. "I was in my assigned seat when Bradley Reynolds took it during my brief absence. When I returned and politely requested he move to his assigned seat, he refused and made racist insinuations. The flight attendant and captain both failed to properly verify our boarding passes, instead assuming I was the problem based solely on racial bias." She leaned forward slightly. "Had I capitulated in that moment, I would have sent a message to our employees, our partners, and our competitors that NextGen's leadership can be intimidated and manipulated. Moreover, we now know that Reynolds's actions were part of a deliberate corporate espionage attempt. By standing firm, I not only maintained my personal integrity but protected NextGen's proprietary information." Elizabeth Chen, the board's most progressive member, nodded emphatically. Vivian's actions demonstrated exactly the kind of principled leadership we need. The results speak for themselves. James Wilson, who typically aligned with Blackwell on conservative approaches, surprised everyone. "I've been in contact with several major shareholders today. The general consensus is that Vivian's handling of this situation has significantly enhanced NextGen's reputation for integrity. The stock is up 11% in after-hours trading." Blackwell seemed prepared to press his point, but Harrison intervened. "I think we need to recognize the reality here. What began as a potentially damaging incident has transformed into a tremendous opportunity, largely due to Vivian's composure and leadership." The discussion shifted to how NextGen should leverage the situation moving forward. Some board members advocated for an aggressive PR campaign highlighting the company's triumph over corporate espionage. Others suggested a more measured approach focused on the technology partnership rather than the personal incident. Throughout the discussion, Vivian observed the shifting dynamics of the board. The same members who might have questioned her judgment hours earlier were now positioning themselves as supporters. The transparency of their transformation was both amusing and instructive, a reminder of how quickly allegiances could shift based on perceived success or failure. When Harrison called for a formal vote on endorsing Vivian's actions and the new partnership agreement, the result was unanimous in favor. Even Richard Blackwell aligned himself with the majority, unwilling to be the lone dissenter in what was clearly becoming a success story. As the meeting concluded, Harrison remained behind with Vivian and Calvin after the video connections ended. "That went well," Calvin observed. "Better than expected," Harrison agreed. "Though I suspect Richard would have taken a different position if the contract hadn't materialized." Vivian nodded. "Success has a way of retroactively justifying decisions that might otherwise be questioned. It's a dynamic I've observed throughout my career." Harrison regarded her thoughtfully. "What happened today has implications beyond NextGen, Vivian. You've become a symbol in a larger conversation about race, gender, and power in corporate America." "I'm aware," Vivian replied.
Though I never sought that role. Few who become symbols do, Harrison said. The question is how we use this platform now that it exists. Their conversation was interrupted by Calvin, who had been monitoring news updates. You need to see this, he said, turning his tablet toward them. The screen displayed breaking news: Rich Tech CEO Gregory Whitfield steps down amid expanding FBI investigation, company stock plummets 30%, Harrison whistled softly. The dominoes are falling quickly. Vivian processed this development, understanding its implications for the industry and for NextGen specifically. With Rich Tech in disarray, market opportunities would expand dramatically. We need to prepare for increased scrutiny of our own operations, she said pragmatically. When a major competitor falters, everyone in the sector faces greater examination. Harrison nodded appreciation of her foresight. Always thinking 3 steps ahead. That's why you're in that chair. As Harrison departed, Calvin updated Vivian on additional developments. The airline had issued a formal apology and announced a comprehensive review of their training procedures. Melissa Wilson and the flight captain had been placed on administrative leave pending investigation. Most significantly, multiple former employees of Rich Tech had come forward with allegations of systematic discrimination and corporate espionage tactics targeting competitors led by women and minorities. This is becoming larger than just what happened on that plane, Calvin observed. It always was, Vivian replied. What happened to me today was merely visible enough to expose patterns that have existed for decades. Her phone chimed with a message from Darius Williams: contract documents ready for review tomorrow morning. Legal team working overnight. Breakfast meeting at 8 a.m. As Vivian confirmed the appointment, she felt the weight of the day's events settling on her shoulders. The adrenaline that had carried her through was beginning to ebb, leaving room for a deeper processing of what had transpired. She had maintained her composure throughout, never allowing herself the luxury of a visible emotional response. Now, alone except for Calvin's trusted presence, she permitted herself a moment of genuine reflection. It's been quite a day, Calvin said softly, recognizing her need for space. Indeed, Vivian agreed. One that began with a simple flight to Chicago and somehow transformed into a national conversation about race, corporate ethics, and resilience. She moved to the window, gazing out at the Chicago skyline illuminated against the night sky. Tomorrow we sign a historic contract. Tonight, I think I'll order room service and get some well-deserved rest. Calvin smiled. I'll make the arrangements. Anything specific you'd like? Vivian considered. A glass of the best champagne they have. Not to celebrate what happened on that plane, but to acknowledge that standing firm for what's right can sometimes lead to unexpected blessings. As Calvin stepped away to make the arrangements, Vivian remained at the window, reflecting on the journey that had brought her to this moment, not just today's dramatic events, but the longer path from a scholarship student with dreams to a CEO whose stand against injustice had resonated across the nation. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and opportunities. Tonight, she would gather her strength and prepare for the next chapter, one that promised to be even more impactful than she had originally envisioned. 6 months after the incident on Flight 237, Vivian Powell sat before the Congressional Committee on Corporate Accountability, her poised demeanor a stark contrast to the charged atmosphere of the hearing room. Camera flashes punctuated the scene as journalists documented what had become a watershed moment in the ongoing national conversation about race, gender, and corporate ethics. Ms. Powell, the committee chairwoman began, your experience catalyzed an investigation that has uncovered widespread corporate espionage and discriminatory practices. Could you share how these past months have transformed your perspective on leadership? Vivian leaned slightly toward the microphone. What happened on that flight revealed how easily existing biases can be weaponized, even in settings where we believe professionalism should prevail. The more significant revelation, however, has been witnessing how one moment of standing firm against injustice can create ripples that ultimately transform entire industries. Indeed, the transformation had been remarkable.
The FBI investigation into rich tech had expanded to include 5 other technology companies engaged in similar practices. 3 CEOs had resigned. Class action lawsuits had been filed by employees alleging systematic discrimination. The airline had implemented comprehensive bias training for all staff and revised their conflict resolution protocols. Most significantly for Vivian, next-gen technologies had flourished. The $700 million partnership with Global Innovations had been just the beginning. Their market valuation had increased by 40%. They had been named Most Ethical Technology Company by Industry Standard magazine and featured on the cover of Business Week under the headline, The Vivian Powell Approach. Leadership with Integrity in a Biased World. Internally, NextGen had implemented groundbreaking diversity initiatives that served as models for the industry. Their AI ethics division, specifically focused on eliminating algorithmic bias, had become a leader in the field. Recruitment of women and minorities in technical roles had increased by 60%. As the congressional hearing concluded, Vivian checked her schedule for the afternoon. Among her appointments was a meeting she had been contemplating for months. Melissa Wilson, the flight attendant who had been instrumental in her removal from Flight 237, had requested a conversation. After losing her job at the airline, Melissa had faced public criticism and professional ostracism. Her tearful apology video had gone viral but did little to repair her reputation. Now, she was completing a corporate ethics program and had reached out to Vivian as part of her personal reconciliation process. The meeting took place in a quiet corner of a Chicago cafe, away from media attention. Melissa looked markedly different from the confident flight attendant of 6 months ago, humbler, more thoughtful, carrying the weight of her very public mistake. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with me," she began, her voice unsteady. "I've wanted to apologize in person since that day." Vivian observed her carefully. "I appreciate that, Melissa. What have you learned from this experience?" "Everything," Melissa replied with unexpected candor. "I've had to confront biases I didn't even realize I carried. I've lost friends who couldn't understand why I was making such a big deal about apologizing to you. I've struggled financially and emotionally." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "But most importantly, I've gained perspective I never had before. I now understand how my actions that day weren't isolated, they were part of patterns so normalized I couldn't even see them." Vivian nodded, sensing genuine transformation rather than performative remorse. "What do you plan to do with this new perspective?" "That's partly why I wanted to meet," Melissa explained. "I've been accepted to a master's program in organizational psychology with a focus on workplace bias. I want to help prevent what happened on that plane from happening elsewhere." By the end of their conversation, Vivian had made an unexpected decision. NextGen's Foundation for Advancing Diversity in Technology had scholarship programs for promising students committed to ethics and inclusion. Melissa's journey of accountability and transformation made her an ideal, if unconventional, candidate. "Your experience gives you unique insight," Vivian told her. "Sometimes the most effective advocates for change are those who have witnessed firsthand the damage biased systems can cause, including their own participation in those systems." That evening, Vivian attended a gala celebrating the launch of Ascension Capital, a new venture fund she had co-founded with Victoria Hughes specifically targeting minority and women-led technology startups. With $1.2 billion in committed capital, the fund represented a structural intervention in the systemic inequities of venture financing. "The real victory," Victoria commented as they watched potential investees networking with industry leaders, "isn't just what happened to you personally, but how you've leveraged that moment to create lasting change." Vivian agreed. Individual victories mean little without structural transformation. Bradley Reynolds's criminal behavior was enabled by systems that need dismantling. Bradley himself had received a 12-year federal sentence for corporate espionage, wire fraud, and conspiracy, the longest sentence ever imposed for white-collar crimes in the technology sector. His case had become a cautionary tale taught in business ethics courses nationwide. 3 days later, Vivian boarded another first-class flight, this time from Chicago back to Atlanta. The difference in her experience was striking. The ground crew recognized her immediately. The flight attendants were respectfully attentive without being obsequious. Fellow passengers offered subtle nods of acknowledgement. As the plane reached cruising altitude, Vivian reflected on the journey of the past 6 months. What had begun as yet another instance of the discrimination she had faced throughout her career had transformed into a platform for meaningful change. The humiliation of being handcuffed and removed from Flight 237 had been painful, but the subsequent opportunities to address systemic inequities had created value far beyond anything she could have anticipated. Her phone chimed with a message from Calvin. Board unanimously approved the expansion into healthcare AI. Also, Senator Martinez requested your testimony on the Tech Accountability Bill next month. Vivian smiled slightly. The next phase was already taking shape. Using NextGen's enhanced position and her personal platform to tackle discriminatory practices in healthcare technology, where algorithmic bias had life-or-death implications for communities of color. As the Atlanta skyline came into view, Vivian felt a sense of purpose that transcended even her previous ambitions. She had always been driven to succeed despite the barriers placed before her. Now, she was equally committed to dismantling those barriers for others. Creating a business landscape where success depended on innovation and integrity rather than privilege and prejudice. The plane touched down smoothly. Another journey completed, but the more significant journey, toward a more equitable future, continued. For Vivian Powell, the fight for justice in corporate America had only just begun. Has this story impacted your perspective on discrimination in professional settings? Do you believe individual stands against injustice can create meaningful systemic change? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video if you found Vivian's journey inspiring. Your engagement helps us bring more powerful stories like this one to light. Thank you for watching, and remember that courage in the face of injustice can transform not just individual lives but entire systems. As Vivian showed us, sometimes standing your ground becomes the catalyst for change that impacts thousands of others. Vivian Powell's journey demonstrates how courage in the face of discrimination can transform individual humiliation into collective progress. By refusing to accept injustice, she not only secured personal vindication but catalyzed systemic change throughout corporate America. Her experience reveals how racial bias often operates beneath a veneer of professionalism, requiring both individual resistance and structural intervention to address effectively. The story illuminates how institutions frequently prioritize comfort over justice, defaulting to assumptions based on appearance rather than facts. Yet it also shows the power of documentation and allies willing to speak truth to power. Amanda's decision to record the incident and Victoria's public support proved crucial in shifting the narrative. Perhaps most importantly, Vivian's approach teaches us that responding to discrimination with dignity and strategic persistence can be more effective than either passive acceptance or uncontrolled anger. By maintaining her composure while firmly standing her ground, she created space for truth to emerge and justice to prevail. The transformation of NextGen into an industry leader for ethical practices demonstrates how principled leadership can drive both moral and financial success, proving that integrity and profitability aren't mutually exclusive but potentially synergistic values. What discrimination have you witnessed or experienced in professional settings? Has anyone ever stood up for you when you faced unfair treatment, or do you wish someone had? Share your story in the comments below. If you found Vivian's journey inspiring, please hit that like button and subscribe to see more powerful stories of resilience and triumph against discrimination. Help spread this important message by sharing with friends and colleagues who might benefit from seeing how one person's courage can spark widespread change. Thank you for watching, and remember that your voice matters in the ongoing struggle for equality and justice in all spaces.